Without warning, the world around him disappeared in an instant. No ground, no sky, no sound, only silver. Rowan felt as though he were falling through water. Memories flashed all around him. Silver wolves running beneath a full moon, and a woman standing on a mountain with 7 figures kneeling before her. A crown, then a sword, fire, blood. Somewhere a child cried, and then darkness. Rowan reached for something that wasn't there. But suddenly he landed. Hard. He rolled onto his back. Darius groaned somewhere nearby. I officially hate portals. Rowan sat up. They were standing inside another chamber. But this one was different. The air was colder and the stone beneath them was covered in frost. And beyond the chamber there were trees. Thousands of them. The forest of death. They had crossed. The keeper looked around. We're close. To Silverhold? Corvin asked. The keeper looked toward the trees. To Mara. Rowan's expression changed and Darius noticed. She really matters to you, doesn't she? If I have to be honest, I don't know what exactly it is. I mean, I don't really know her personally. Huh? But you want to find her? Yes. Why? Rowan looked toward the forest. Well, besides the fact that she is probably scared and alone out here, and she might even be hurt and in need of help. Who knows? I just know we have to try and find her. Not quite sure as to why, yet, but that's enough. They entered the forest. The trees seemed to close behind them, with only the sound of their footsteps. The messenger whispered, "Why is it called the Forest of Death?" The keeper answered without looking back. Because most people who enter never leave. Darius muttered, "Wonderful, just wonderful." They walked deeper and quickly the temperature dropped. Rowan suddenly stopped. What is it? Everyone froze. He pointed. Footprints. Barely visible in the mud. Small but human. Darius crouched. Recent. He looked around. She's here. Rowan nodded. They followed the trail. The footprints became harder to see. Then they heard it. A very faint sound. Someone was crying. Rowan raised his hand and everyone stopped. There it was again. A woman's voice. Rowan moved toward it. They pushed through a wall of branches, and there she was. An old woman crouched beneath a tree. Her clothes were torn, hair tangled. Her face was pale with hunger and fear. The moment she saw them, she scrambled backward and held a broken branch in both hands like a weapon. You stay away. Rowan immediately stopped. Relax. We won't hurt you. She tightened her grip. That's what they all say. Do you think I'm stupid? The keeper stepped forward. Mara. She stopped and her eyes widened. How do you know my name? I know who you are. Mara stared at him, then at the others. Her eyes settled on Rowan. And you? Rowan hesitated. Just a scout. Her eyes narrowed. From where? Hidden community. Mara's expression changed. You came from there? Yes. Why? Rowan looked at her. Because we need to reach Silverhold. Mara went still. The fear in her eyes disappeared. Silverhold. The keeper nodded. It's awake. Mara's lips parted. She looked toward the sky through the trees. But I thought it was only a story. It was. The keeper looked toward the distant mountains. Until now. Mara slowly lowered the branch, then whispered the name she had carried in her heart for months. Ivy. Rowan heard it, and the way Mara said her name told him everything. Not fear or reverence. Love. You know the queen? Mara looked at him. I knew her before she became a queen. I was a young lady when my mother said to make sure nothing ever happens to little Ivy. She never told us why, but after she was exiled by our Alpha, word of the fulfillment of the prophecy became news. Kane knew we were close, and I was tortured to get info about Ivy. But I kept refusing, and eventually got exiled too. I have searched for days to no avail. Mara looked toward the general direction of where Silverhold should be. She promised me she would survive. I just need to find her. Sadly, I am too weak to keep going. Rowan swallowed. He had heard so many stories about Ivy. Mara looked at Rowan again. I take it you know her too? Rowan shook his head. Not personally. He looked toward the distant mountains. I just know the Silver Wolf Queen had returned. Mara studied him. Then, strangely, she smiled. You haven't met her yet. No. And like on cue, somewhere far away, way beyond the forest, a wolf howled and Mara's eyes widened. Her face changed. I know that howl. She turned toward it. That's her. That's Ivy. The keeper looked toward the mountains. Well, then we move. Are you accompanying us there? Mara quickly nodded, and without another word, they all began walking towards Silverhold. An unspoken sense of urgency lingering about them as they moved. They walked on in silence, each busy with their own thoughts. The forest felt different now. It no longer felt as though it was trying to swallow them. Instead, there was something almost watchful about it. Mara noticed it too. Wait. Something is different. Do you feel it? The forest wasn't like this before. Rowan glanced at her. What do you mean? What was it like? I dunno. Dead. She looked around. Completely dead. No birds. No insects. Nothing. But now, she listened. Somewhere high above them, a bird called. Mara smiled faintly. Now it's breathing again. The keeper looked toward the distant mountains. Silverhold's awakening is reaching farther than we thought. Corvin frowned. You mean the land itself is changing? The old kingdom was never only a city. The keeper continued walking. Silverhold was connected to everything around it. The forests, the mountains, the rivers, the houses, and the bloodlines. Rowan looked at the keeper. So when Silverhold wakes, the kingdom remembers. The keeper nodded. And those connected to it begin remembering too. Mara stopped. And by remembering you mean? The keeper looked at her. Things that were buried. Mara's face tightened. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she whispered. I've been remembering. Rowan turned toward her. What? Mara looked ahead. The night Silverhold fell. Nobody interrupted. I had forgotten most of it. But since entering this forest, she rubbed her temple. I keep seeing things. What things? Darius asked. Mara closed her eyes. Fire. People running. Someone screaming for the gates to close. She swallowed. And my mother's hand. Rowan watched her carefully. Was she afraid? Terrified. Mara opened her eyes. But she didn't let go of me. She smiled sadly. Not once. They continued walking. A few minutes later, Mara spoke again. She told me something that night. Mara looked toward the mountains. She said the queen had sent people away for a reason. One from each house. She told me that whatever happened, the houses must survive. Corvin looked at his own arm. The faint silver housemark was still visible beneath his skin. She knew. Mara nodded. She knew something had to survive the fall. Rowan thought about the 7 swords. The 7 stars. The marks appearing one by one. Maybe the queen hadn't simply been trying to save people. Maybe she had been planting seeds. waiting for the day they could grow again. They reached a narrow clearing. A stream ran through the middle of it. The water was crystal clear, almost unnaturally so. Mara stopped beside it. Hey, wait. I know this place. Darius looked around. How? I came here with Ivy. Rowan looked at her. Before the fall? No. After. I think I was about 19 or 20, and little Ivy about 5 or 6 years old. She adored this place. Mara knelt carefully beside the stream. Ivy used to sit here. She would get so angry when my mother told her she couldn't go any farther. A faint laugh escaped her. She always wanted to explore. Rowan smiled. That sounds like her. Mara looked at him. Thought you said you've never met her. No, I haven't. But you sound like you know her. Rowan's smile faded slightly. I know the stories. Mara studied him. Stories aren't the same as knowing someone. You do know that, right? Suppose they aren't. Rowan looked toward the mountains. Mara smiled. Well, then you'll have to meet her. Something about the way she said it made Rowan look at her. Mara seemed almost certain. Why are you looking at me like that? Like what? Like you already know something. Mara shook her head. I don't. I just think. She hesitated. I just think some meetings are meant to happen. What is that supposed to mean? Mara laughed. I am sure you will find that out for yourself soon enough. Rowan didn't answer, but he couldn't stop thinking about her words as they moved on. The way Mara looks at him, let it seem like he is missing something, and that makes him uneasy. The mountains were closer now, much closer. But then, without warning, the ground began to tremble. Everyone stopped. Darius reached for his sword. What now? The keeper raised a hand. Wait. The trembling continued. Then silver light burst from the ground ahead. A line of ancient stones rose from beneath the earth, one after another. They formed an enormous pathway leading toward the mountains. Mara gasped and stared at it. I've never seen this before. The keeper smiled. Because it hasn't been there for centuries. Corvin stepped closer. What is it? The King's Road. Darius looked down the ancient path. And where does it lead? The keeper looked toward the mountains. To the gates of Silverhold. Rowan felt something move through him. Not fear or excitement. Something deeper. Recognition. As though some part of him had been waiting for this exact moment. Mara was the first one to step onto the ancient road. And the moment her foot touched the stone, silver light traveled beneath it. First, only one stone. Then another. Then another. And then, the road awakened beneath their feet. Mara stared. She's calling us. I can feel her. The keeper nodded in agreement. Rowan stepped forward. The silver light spread farther and farther down. Toward the mountains. Toward Silverhold. Then everyone froze. Far beyond them, a single wolf howled. Mara smiled through tears. She knows we're coming. Rowan looked toward the mountains, and for the first time, an unexpected thought crossed his mind. He wondered what it would feel like to finally stand before the Silver Wolf Queen. He had known she existed. He had known the prophecy. Everyone did. And he had known that one day their paths might cross. But he had never imagined that when it finally happened, it would feel as though the entire world had been holding its breath. The group continued along the King's Road, as Silverhold waited. The ancient road stretched ahead of them, disappearing into the mountains beneath a pale silver glow. No one spoke for several minutes. Even Darius seemed to have run out of sarcastic comments. And that, more than anything, told Rowan how serious the moment was. Mara walked slowly beside him. Her eyes remained fixed on the mountains. She's there. Rowan glanced at her. You keep saying that. Because I know. You haven't seen her. No, maybe not, but I know Ivy. Mara smiled faintly. Rowan looked ahead. He wondered what that would be like. To know the queen before the crown. Before the prophecy and legends. To know the woman beneath the title. The road climbed gradually, and with every step, the air became colder. Then, Rowan noticed something. The silver mark on his forearm was glowing. And he stopped. Corvin noticed. Yours too. Rowan looked over. Corvin's mark was glowing as well. Darius lifted his arm. His was brighter than before. The keeper smiled and looked at them. The closer we get to Silverhold, the stronger the connection becomes. Darius frowned. That's reassuring. The keeper looked at him. It wasn't meant to be. Darius sighed. Apologies, of course it wasn't. Mara smiled. For the first time since they had found her, she seemed less afraid. Then she suddenly stopped. Rowan turned. What is it? She was staring at something beside the road. An old stone pillar stood half buried beneath vines. Mara walked toward it. Her fingers brushed the surface. I remember this. The keeper followed her. What do you remember? My mother. Mara closed her eyes. She brought me here once. Before we went back to Silverhold. She told me to remember the road. Rowan frowned. Why? I don't know. Mara opened her eyes. But I remember what she said. What? Mara looked toward the mountain. She swallowed. If the kingdom ever calls you home, follow the silver. The keeper stared at the road. Then quietly said, she knew. Mara looked at him. She knew what? That one day the road would awaken again. Mara's eyes filled with tears. My mother believed. The keeper nodded. She never stopped. Mara touched the pillar once more before she turned away. As they continued, the road became steeper. The trees gradually disappeared. The mountain rose before them like a wall. And then Rowan saw it. A majestic structure carved directly into the rock. A massive archway. Ancient. Broken. But still standing. 7 symbols were carved above it. 6 were faint. 1 was glowing. Rowan stared. What's that? The keeper stepped forward. The outer gate. Darius looked around. Okay. So, where's Silverhold? The keeper pointed upward. Rowan followed his hand and his breath caught. The mountain wasn't empty. Far above them, clinging to the cliffs, stood towers. Silver towers. Some broken. Some almost buried. Some barely visible beneath centuries of stone. But they were there. Silverhold. Not a ruin. It was beginning to rise. Mara covered her mouth. Rowan couldn't look away. The city seemed impossible. Beautiful. Almost alive. Then something moved high above. A wolf. Silver. It stood on a distant ridge, watching them. The wolf lifted its head and a deep and powerful howl rolled across the mountains. This time, they heard another answered. Then another. Then dozens. Wolves began emerging from the surrounding forest. Rowan looked behind them. They were everywhere. Silver wolves. Old. Young. Large. Small. They came silently until the entire road behind them was filled. Darius stared. Please tell me that's normal. The keeper smiled. Not anymore. Oh, come on. What does it mean? The keeper looked toward Silverhold. The kingdom is gathering its people. Rowan looked at the wolves, then back toward the city. Something deep inside him tightened. He has never felt this way. What on earth is going on? They passed beneath the ancient arch. The moment Rowan stepped through, the entire mountain shook. A thunderous sound rolled through the stone. Everyone froze. Then, light exploded across the mountainside. Ancient windows opened. Bridges unfolded. Tower after tower rose from the earth. Silver water began pouring through channels that had been dry for centuries. The city was waking. The keeper looked toward the heart of the city. We must go. They began climbing. Rowan walked beside Mara and neither spoke. But he could feel something changing. A pull. A strange pressure in his chest. Every step made it stronger. Then Rowan stopped. He looked toward the city and for one brief second, he thought he heard a woman's voice calling to him. Not words exactly. More like a whisper carried by the wind. He turned again, but nothing. Darius looked at him. What's going on? Are you okay? Rowan shook his head. Yeah, don't worry, I'm sure it's nothing. But he knew it wasn't nothing. This was weird. Something unknown. He felt like he's going to explode, and his skin is tingling. He could feel his wolf inside howling and clawing to break through. Why is he going crazy like this? He is always calm and hardly ever flare up like other wolves. But with every step, Rowan could feel it intensify. Something like a memory on the outer edges of his mind. Familiar and strange at the same time. They continued toward the heart of Silverhold. Rowan could feel the strange pull getting stronger. But it wasn't only him anymore. His wolf was awake. Very much awake. He could feel him moving restlessly beneath his skin. Something is here. Rowan frowned. He had never felt his wolf behave like this. Not during battle or when danger was near. Not even when they had first entered the forest of death. This was different. His wolf wasn't afraid. It was searching, expecting. Then Rowan suddenly stopped and Darius looked back. What now? But Rowan didn't answer. He turned his head slowly. Somewhere ahead, a wolf growled. Low and deep, but not threatening. This was a calling. Rowan's wolf answered before he could stop it. A deep rumbling growl escaped his throat. Everyone instantly froze on the spot and slowly turned toward him. Darius raised an eyebrow. You want to explain that? Rowan looked embarrassed. It wasn't me. Darius stared at him. That was definitely your wolf. I know. Well, Rowan ignored him. His eyes were fixed ahead. Then another sound came. A howl. Beautiful. Powerful. It rolled through Silverhold and seemed to shake the very air around them. Mara's eyes widened. The silver wolf appeared at the far end of the courtyard. She stood completely still, watching them. More specifically, watching Rowan. Her silver eyes locked onto him, and Rowan felt his wolf rise inside him. His wolf wanted forward, and Rowan struggled to keep control. Lunara took one step forward, then another. She stopped only a few feet away from them. Rowan could see the tiny silver markings around her eyes. Ancient, majestic, beautiful. Almost identical to the markings he had seen in the old drawings of the Silver Wolf Queen. Lunara tilted her head. Then she looked past Rowan, up toward the highest steps of the courtyard. Rowan followed her gaze and then, everything inside him went silent. A woman stood at the top of the stairs. The silver light surrounding her seemed to come from her. Her dark hair moved gently in the mountain wind as her eyes moved over the courtyard below her. From the wolves to Lunara. And then, Her gaze landed on Rowan. He stopped breathing, and for several seconds, neither of them moved. Rowan could feel his whole body shaking uncontrollably. The Silver Wolf Queen. He had known about her return. He had known the stories. He had known that one day he might have to stand beside her. But none of that had prepared him for this. Why is this so intense? Why does she have such an effect on him? And what the hell is going on with his wolf? He desperately tried to mind link Zora, his wolf. But then, instead of answering Rowan's link, his wolf suddenly pushed forward. Hard. A loud rumble coming from deep within Rowan's chest, followed by one word.
Mate.
Rowan's chest tightened as his whole world came to an immediate standstill. His heartbeat became almost painful in his ears. And then, across the courtyard, Ivy reacted. Her hand went to her chest. Her eyes widened. Mate. For several long seconds, neither of them moved. Rowan could barely hear anything anymore. His heart was thumping in his ears. His palms were sweaty. The courtyard around him had disappeared. The wolves, even the people standing around him, seemed distant. There was only Ivy, and the word that's still echoing through his mind.
Mate.
Zora pushed forward again. Not violently this time. Almost reverently.
Mate.
Rowan swallowed hard. He had spent his entire life believing that when a wolf found its mate, there would be certainty. Something simple. Something understandable. This was nothing like that. This felt like his entire body had recognized something his mind had never been prepared for but always knew. Across the courtyard, Ivy was experiencing the same battle. Her hand remained pressed against her chest. Her breathing had become shallow. Lenara. Her wolf was restless. Pacing.
Mate.
Ivy's eyes widened. Can it be? She whispered the word. Not because she didn't want it. Because she didn't understand it. She had survived rejection. Exile. Loneliness. War. She had spent months learning how to stand alone. She had never imagined that her wolf would call anyone mate. Ever. Has the moon goddess given her a second chance? A man she had never met. A man whose name she still don't know. Lunara stepped forward, and whether she wanted to or not, Ivy's body instinctively followed. One step. Rowan saw it, and without thinking, he stepped forward too. Their wolves answered each other. A low growl came from Rowan's chest. Lunara lifted her head in recognition. The silver wolf beside Ivy moved forward. The two wolves stared across the distance. Then, they bowed their heads. The entire courtyard fell silent. Even the keeper looked stunned. Darius slowly lowered his sword hand. What in the hell? Corvin stared at the wolves. Well, I can honestly say I did not expect this. The keeper didn't answer. He was just staring at Rowan and at the glowing mark on his arm. Then at Ivy, and his expression changed. Something had just been confirmed. Something so ancient he had feared, but hoped for at the same time. Mara looked between them, and she smiled. A slow, knowing smile. I knew it. Darius tore his eyes from Ivy and Rowan and looked at her. You knew what? Mara's smile grew. That there was something about the way he spoke about her. Then, Rowan moved. Their fingertips finally touched. For one impossibly long second, nothing happened. Ivy felt the warmth of his skin against hers. Rowan felt the tiny tremble in her fingers. Neither of them breathed. Neither of them moved. They simply stared into each other's eyes. And then, something changed. The air around them suddenly became still. Completely still. The wind that had been moving through the courtyard stopped. The silver light hanging above Silverhold seemed to freeze in midair. Even the wolves fell silent. Rowan's eyes widened. He felt something beneath his feet. A vibration. So faint at first that he thought he had imagined it. Then it came again. Stronger. A deep, ancient pulse moving through the stone beneath them. Rowan felt it in his chest. Ivy felt it too. Her eyes widened. What? She never finished. The mountain answered. A tremendous roar tore through Silverhold. Stone groaned. The ground beneath their feet shook violently. Dust and tiny fragments of ancient crystal rained from the surrounding towers. Then, silver light burst from beneath their joined hands. Ivy gasped. Rowan felt the light rush through his arm. It wasn't hot. It wasn't cold. It was something entirely different. It felt alive, like thousands of tiny sparks moving beneath his skin. The light traveled up his arm, across his chest, and through his entire body. Zora suddenly surged forward. Not fighting for control. Not demanding. Welcoming. A powerful howl erupted from deep within Rowan's chest. At the exact same moment, Lunara threw back her head. Her howl answered his. The sound was so powerful that the ancient walls seemed to tremble with it. Then every wolf in Silverhold answered. One, then another, then dozens, then hundreds, until the entire kingdom was filled with the sound of wolves. It rolled through the courtyards, up the towers, across the mountains, and into the night. Ivy's eyes filled with tears. She could feel Lunara inside her. Not restless anymore. Not searching. Not wondering. Home. A third pulse followed, stronger than the first two, and this time the entire courtyard responded. A deep vibration rolled beneath their feet, and somewhere beyond them an ancient tower groaned as stone shifted against stone. Rowan barely noticed. Neither did Ivy. Their eyes never left one another. Zora had gone completely silent inside Rowan, not asleep and not gone, but simply watching. For the first time since Rowan had known his wolf, there was no restless need to push forward and no demand for control. Zora seemed content simply to experience the moment with him. Across from him, Lunara had become just as still. Her silver eyes remained fixed on Rowan, but there was no longer any uncertainty in them. Only recognition. Only peace. Ivy swallowed. Lunara. She felt her wolf answer from somewhere deep inside her. He is ours. Tears immediately filled Ivy's eyes. She didn't know whether she wanted to laugh or cry. For so long she had believed that she would never truly belong anywhere again. After Kane's rejection, the humiliation, the exile, and everything that followed, she had slowly learned how to build a life where she needed no one. She had learned how to survive alone, and eventually she had convinced herself that perhaps surviving was all the moon goddess had ever intended for her. But now Rowan stood in front of her, holding her hand as though it were the most natural thing in the world, and something inside her that had been closed for so long was beginning to open. Rowan watched the emotions moving across her face. He wanted to reach out and wipe the tears away, but he didn't want to move too quickly, so instead he simply held her hand a little more firmly. Ivy smiled through her tears. Rowan's own smile deepened. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was warm and strangely intimate, the kind of silence that only happens when two people no longer feel the need to fill every space with words. Then Ivy looked down at their joined hands. I don't understand this. Rowan followed her gaze before looking back into her eyes.
Neither do I.
She searched his face for uncertainty, for hesitation, for anything that might tell her this was a mistake. Instead, she found the same thing she was feeling. But I'm not afraid, she whispered. Rowan smiled softly.
Neither am I.
And somehow that was enough. Neither of them noticed the change beginning above them. At first, the night sky simply seemed to shimmer. A faint silver haze appeared above the mountain peaks, so delicate that it could easily have been mistaken for mist or reflected moonlight. Then the haze began to move, rising slowly from Silverhold and gathering above the towers before spreading farther and farther across the heavens. The light grew brighter. The clouds disappeared beneath it. The entire sky slowly took on the same silver glow that surrounded the ancient city. One by one, the wolves began lifting their heads. The howling faded. The kingdom became strangely quiet. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then a single star appeared. It was small at first, almost hidden within the silver haze, but it slowly grew brighter until it burned above Silverhold like a tiny piece of the moon itself. A second star appeared beside it. Then a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and finally the seventh. 7 brilliant stars now burned above the ancient city, and as they brightened, they slowly began moving across the heavens, taking their places in a perfect formation. The 7 stars pulsed together. Once, then again. And below them, something began to form. At first it looked like another patch of silver light, faint and almost transparent, but the glow slowly gathered into a curved shape. A thin crescent appeared between the 7 stars, and then the silver light began spreading across it, growing wider and brighter until the crescent became a magnificent full moon. A silver moon. Huge, luminous, and almost impossibly beautiful. The 7 stars surrounded it, not beneath it and not above it, but around it, as though they had been waiting centuries to take their rightful places in the heavens. For several long seconds, nobody moved. Mara stood completely still, tears slowly running down her cheeks as she stared upward. She had heard the stories all her life. She had heard whispers of the prophecy and the kingdom that had fallen, and she had spent years wondering whether any of it had ever truly been real. Now she knew. The keeper looked toward the sky, and for the first time in centuries, the ancient guardian allowed the emotion he had carried for so long to show on his face. He had watched Silverhold fall. He had lived through the silence that followed. He had protected its secrets and waited for the day when the kingdom would have a chance to rise again. And now he was watching it happen. Darius stared upward, completely speechless for perhaps the first time in his life. He stopped. There simply weren't words big enough for what he was seeing. Corvin glanced at him but said nothing. Even he seemed to understand that some moments were too sacred to ruin with a joke. 7 stars. 1 silver moon. The ancient symbol that had survived when almost everything else had been destroyed. But Rowan and Ivy still saw none of it. They remained completely lost inside their own world. The silver moonlight fell across their faces, reflecting in their eyes, but neither looked upward. Rowan could only see Ivy, and Ivy could only see him. Slowly, Rowan lifted his free hand and touched her cheek. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned gently into his palm, closing her eyes for the briefest moment as though allowing herself to believe that this was real. When she opened them again, Rowan could see the emotion in them. "I don't want this to end," she whispered. Above them, the 7 stars suddenly grew brighter. The silver moon answered. A wave of light swept across the heavens and descended over Silverhold, bathing the entire city in silver. Every crystal window ignited at once. Ancient symbols hidden beneath the walls awakened. Silver water rushed through the fountains, and the towers gleamed so brightly that the entire mountain seemed to have become a living jewel. Then the light reached the courtyard. Rowan felt it first. A warm current moved through his body, and Ivy gasped as the same sensation passed through her. Their house marks blazed brighter than ever before, the silver symbols beneath their skin shining with an intensity that made the air around them shimmer. The threads connecting them tightened, weaving themselves together until they formed a luminous bond between their hands. Zora lifted his head inside Rowan. Lenara did the same. And together, their wolves released another howl. This time, every wolf in Silverhold answered. The sound rose into the night beneath the 7 stars and the silver moon, rolling through the ancient kingdom until it seemed as though the mountains themselves were howling with them. The 7 houses had returned. The silver moon had awakened. And deep beneath Silverhold, beneath the ancient stone and crystal and everything that had survived the fall, something that had been waiting for 1,000 years finally opened its eyes. It was a deep metallic groan that seemed to come from beneath the entire kingdom. Ancient mechanisms were moving. Stone was grinding against stone. Something enormous was unlocking. Rowan felt the vibration through Ivy's hand. She looked at him. "Something is waking up." He nodded. "I can feel it." The silver light around them suddenly intensified. It traveled from their joined hands and raced outward once more, but this time it didn't spread across the city. It moved downward, straight through the stone beneath their feet. Rowan watched in amazement as thin lines of silver light appeared between the cracks in the courtyard floor. They spread outward like veins beneath the stone, forming an enormous pattern around them. Ivy stepped closer to Rowan. "Rowan." He looked down. The lines were forming symbols. Ancient symbols. 7 of them. Each one different. Each one connected to the next. And in the very center was a single crescent moon. The keeper saw it. His face went pale. "Move away." Rowan looked up. "What?" "Move away from the center." There was something in the keeper's voice that made everyone obey. Darius grabbed Mara's arm and pulled her backward. Corvin stepped away as well. Even the wolves began retreating from the glowing pattern. But Rowan and Ivy remained where they were. Their hands were still joined. The silver threads still connected them. And neither of them seemed capable of letting go. "I can't," Rowan whispered. Ivy looked at him. "Neither can I." The keeper stared at them. For a moment, he looked frightened. Not of Rowan. Not of Ivy. Of what their union had awakened. Then the ground beneath the 7 symbols opened. Not violently. Almost reverently. The ancient stone separated, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Silver light poured upward from below. Cold air followed it. And with that air came a scent Rowan recognized immediately. Wolf. Ancient wolf. His wolf reacted before he could. Zora growled softly. Lenara answered. Ivy's eyes widened. "Someone is down there." The keeper slowly approached the opening. "No more like." He stared into the darkness. Something is. Darius looked at him. That distinction is not nearly as comforting as you seem to think. The keeper ignored him. His attention remained on the staircase. I had hoped this chamber would never open again. Corvin frowned. What chamber? The keeper looked toward him. The Hall of Crowns. The words seemed to silence everyone. Mara's face changed. The Hall of Crowns? The keeper nodded. The place where every Silverhold queen was crowned. Ivy's fingers tightened around Rowan's. She looked toward the staircase. Then why would it open now? The keeper looked at her. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then his gaze moved to Rowan. And back to Ivy. Because Silverhold knows. Knows what? She asked. The keeper's voice became softer. That its queen has returned. Ivy's breath caught and Rowan looked at her. Something inside him tightened at the way she reacted to those words. She had spent so long carrying the title alone, carrying the weight of a kingdom she had never even seen, and now the ancient kingdom itself was acknowledging her. But before either of them could say anything, a sound rose from the darkness below. A single note. Deep. Clear. Ancient. A horn. Everyone froze. Then another horn answered from somewhere deeper within the mountain. Then another. And another. The sounds traveled through Silverhold, echoing through the towers and tunnels until the entire kingdom seemed to come alive with them. Mara covered her mouth. The old bells. The keeper looked toward her. They aren't bells. She shook her head. My mother told me about them. Her voice trembled. They were sounded when the queen entered the Hall of Crowns. Ivy stared at the staircase. But I'm not a queen. The keeper looked directly at her. Not yet. For the first time, something flickered across Ivy's face. Not fear or uncertainty. Something deeper. A realization. Rowan squeezed her hand gently. She looked at him. He smiled. Whatever waited at the bottom of those stairs, whatever the ancient kingdom expected from her, she wouldn't have to face it alone. Together, they took their first step toward the Hall of Crowns. Behind them, the 7 stars continued burning above Silverhold. The silver moon shone over the ancient city. And far beneath the mountain, something else had begun to awaken. Something that had been waiting for the return of the Silver Wolf Queen. And the man destined to stand beside her. The first step felt strangely warm beneath Ivy's foot. She stopped. Rowan looked at her. What is it? Ivy glanced down at the ancient stone. I'm not sure. I thought I felt. She hesitated. A heartbeat. Rowan listened. At first, he heard nothing except the distant horns still echoing through the mountain, but then Zora stirred inside him, his attention sharpening as he listened more carefully. There it was. A slow, deep pulse. Not coming from Ivy or Rowan. From somewhere beneath them. A pause. Then another. Rowan looked at the keeper. You hear it too? The keeper nodded slowly. Yes. Darius looked between them. Would anyone like to explain why the mountain appears to have a heartbeat? The keeper gave him a tired look. Silverhold was never merely a city. Darius frowned. That sounds like something you probably should have mentioned before we walked into it. The keeper almost smiled. There were many things I should have mentioned. Fantastic. Corvin glanced down the staircase. Can we argue about that later? The keeper nodded. Yes, because whatever is awakening will not wait for us to finish. They continued downward. The staircase curved gently into the mountain, each step carved from smooth black stone and lined with narrow strips of crystal that glowed faintly as Ivy and Rowan passed. The farther they went, the colder the air became, yet neither of them felt the cold the way others have. Their joined hands remained warm, almost unnaturally so. Ivy glanced at Rowan's hand. Their fingers were still intertwined. She smiled faintly. Should we let go? Rowan looked at her. The question sounded simple. It wasn't. He slowly shook his head. I don't think I want to. Ivy's smile grew. Neither do I. Behind them, Darius quietly looked at Corvin. Corvin raised an eyebrow. Darius whispered, "They're going to be unbearable." Corvin glanced at the couple ahead of them. They haven't even started yet. Mara heard them and gave the smallest laugh. For the first time since she had been found in the forest of death, the sound didn't carry fear. It sounded almost like the woman she must once have been. The staircase finally opened into a vast underground chamber. Everyone stopped in unison. The room stretched farther than any of them could see, its ceiling disappearing into darkness. Massive pillars rose from the floor, each carved with the crest of one of the 7 houses. Ancient silver banners hung between them, untouched by time, their fabric moving gently despite the complete absence of wind. At the far end stood an enormous set of doors. They were not made of wood or ordinary metal. They appeared to have been carved from a single piece of pale crystal. 7 symbols were engraved across their surface. 6 were dark, only 1 glowed. Ivy stared at it. The same symbol. Rowan looked at the mark. It's yours. She nodded. The keeper stepped forward. Not entirely. He looked at the glowing symbol. It's not hers alone. Rowan frowned. What does that mean? The keeper turned toward them. The 7 houses were never simply 7 families. They were 7 parts of something greater. His eyes moved to Rowan's glowing mark. And now 2 of those parts have found each other. The crystal doors suddenly gave a low, resonant hum. Ivy instinctively stepped closer to Rowan. The light beneath their skin brightened. Then the first symbol on the doors began glowing. Not Ivy's. Rowan's. He stared at it. What? The second symbol answered. Ivy's. Silver light traveled across the doors, connecting the 2 symbols with a thin line of light. Then another symbol flickered. Darius looked at his arm. His mark had begun glowing again. Well, apparently I'm involved in whatever is happening. The 3rd symbol ignited. Then a 4th. A 5th. The remaining 2 stayed dark. Everyone stared. The keeper's expression became unreadable. Mara looked at the glowing symbols. 5. The keeper nodded. 5 have answered the call. Darius looked around the chamber. But there are 7. Yes. So we're still missing 2. The keeper's gaze moved toward the darkness beyond the chamber. Not missing. He paused. Just not yet awakened. A deep sound came from behind the crystal doors. Not a horn this time. A voice. Faint. Ancient. So faint that Rowan wasn't even certain he had heard it. He looked at Ivy. She was staring at the doors too. You heard that, right? She nodded. I think so. What did it say? Ivy's expression changed. I don't know. Then Lenara spoke inside her. Not with words this time. With a feeling. A memory that did not belong to Ivy. A woman standing beneath a silver moon. A crown resting in her hands. A man beside her. 7 figures kneeling before them. Then fire. The vision disappeared as quickly as it came. And it made Ivy stagger. Rowan immediately caught her. Ivy? She looked at him, breathing hard. I saw.